in the 2022 school board election cycle. For those of you who don't know, Secular AZ is a 501c3 organization focused on protecting the Constitution and the separation of church and state in Arizona for over a decade. I'm excited to be hosting our sixth in a series of candidate forums for school board candidates in Arizona. We decided to begin hosting this type of event because our members care about the growing threat of white Christian nationalism in our state and in our country. And we're seeing how this political ideology is threatening our local school boards. And our local school boards truly are the heart of our democracy. I know that we have probably some people who've never visited our organization or attended any of our events. And if our mission is something that you care deeply about, we ask you to consider becoming a member of our organization. We're actually going to be raising the prices for our membership at the end of this year. So you can get in on a smoking deal of $30 a year, which will open you up to all kinds of opportunities of events like this, our Secular Day at the Capitol, our Secular Summit, where we had Congressman Jamie Raskin speak in 2021. You could consider becoming a monthly donor. You could consider volunteering for our various events throughout the state, or better yet, you can do all of those things. We also provide folks with opportunities to guide you through the Request to Speak or RTS app so that you can engage with your elected officials at the Arizona legislature when you sign up for our action alerts. So tonight, we are going to be speaking with candidates for the Flagstaff Unified School Board. I'm very excited that this is our first non-Maricopa County school board event. According to public records, there are 5 candidates running for 2 seats in Flagstaff Unified. There are 2 4-year seats open. I want to acknowledge the other candidates who are running in FUSD who are not here tonight. Mindy Thomas is taking a vacation with her family and was unable to attend tonight. Gretchen Slover initially confirmed her attendance and then said she wanted to learn more about our organization. She also said that she hasn't yet qualified for the ballot, although I do believe ballot signatures petition signatures were supposed to be turned in, at least here. Again, we're very sometimes Maricopa County centric, but she wanted to make sure that she had that qualification. We also received no response from the other candidate, Holly Jones. So tonight, we will be speaking with Eric Sather and Christine Pavlik. In a moment, I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but first I want to explain the format. We will go in alphabetical order for our intros, and candidates will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves. Lindsay, who is our development director, will let us know when their time is up. I will do this to let you know when you have 10 seconds left. And then at about 7:05 or so, we will move on to questions from the audience. The first part of this presentation will be questions that we've created. And then the second half will be for audience members. We really encourage you to go ahead and post them in the Q&A, which you can find at the bottom of your Zoom screen. I'll also be monitoring our Facebook page so I can see if there's any questions coming in there. So without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and start with Christine because alphabetically you are first. So Christine Pavlik, please go ahead and introduce yourself to the folks here at Secular AZ.
Hi, thank you so much, Jeannie, Lindsay, and Secular Coalition for Arizona. You guys do amazing work. I'm grateful to you for hosting these candidate forums and especially for including communities outside of Phoenix. And thank you so much to everyone tuning in for being interested and civically engaged and working to learn about the folks who are hoping to earn your votes this year. So my name's Christine Pavlik. I'm running for Flagstaff Unified School District Governing Board. I grew up here in Flagstaff and I went to FUSD schools starting in 4th grade. I'm also a mom. Right now I have 1 child in the district. He's going to be attending Coconino High School this upcoming year, which is actually where I graduated from back in 2004. I also have 2 little kids that will be future FUSD students in the next 2 to 5 years. And for a long time now, I've been a really active, engaged community member. And I think I'm relatively well known as a leader and a dedicated and passionate advocate for children and families, public education, and community care here in Flagstaff. So I believe strongly in the power and importance of community. I think it's our responsibility to take care of one another and advocate for those of our neighbors that are our most vulnerable. And I've worked in social services, starting with nonprofit management and housing, victim services, food banking, and now I work as an administrator of federal grant funds for social services like homelessness prevention, as well as community and economic development programs for low-income households. Ultimately, community service has always been really important to me. And about 10 years ago, I started to become more involved, and I started volunteering with organizations like Northern Arizona Interfaith Council, which allowed me to learn a lot about school funding and state laws, and it gave me experience lobbying for education with state senators and representatives. And I realized that this was something I wanted to do more. I knew I would eventually want to run for school board, but as a single mom and a foster mom of 6 kids at the time, mostly little ones, I had to put it on the back burner. And in the meantime, I volunteered with my son's school when he was in elementary school with the PTO, and more recently with the school district's visioning team. And I'm just really excited to continue serving our community, hopefully as a school board member this next year.
Thank you so much for that, Christine. Clearly, you are very involved in local politics there in Coconino County. So thank you for your service. Eric, go ahead. Same to you. 3 minutes. Introduce yourself. Let the people know who you are. Oh, Eric, make sure that you're unmuted.
Yep, there we go. That's the worst part of Zoom, I guess, every single time. I've been doing this for 3 years now, and it's like, it gets me all the time, forever. I'm preaching to the choir. My name, well, first of all, thank you, Secular AZ, for inviting us here for this, I think, very important forum. And thank you, everyone that's paying attention right now. My name is Eric Sather, and I'm running for FUSD School Board. For the last 20 years, I've been a nonfiction storyteller in one capacity or another in the video format. And for the past 13 years, I've worked at NAU in the Office of Communication. I've been working to tell NAU's story through video. I have 2 kids that both attend FUSD schools. Now senior, I guess school starts in not too long. So she'll be a senior at Coconino and a 7th grader at Sonala. I witnessed both of my kids grow to be intellectually curious people, and this is in no small part to the amazing education that they've received. I'm running because I do believe in the power of education. I believe in the power of education for all. I believe that education is for the entire community. I believe in the power of education to be transformative and to lift us all up. I've seen the transformative power of education on my own kids, and I felt it was time to give back to this awesome organization, and that's kind of why I'm running and why I'm here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. There were some interesting things that I heard in both of your bios. Actually, I appreciate you being a foster parent, Christine. Thank you for stepping up and doing that. Although one of the bills that we tracked this legislative session had to do with making it more difficult for foster parents to be able to do so. So thank you for that. And nonfiction storyteller, that's great. I've actually attended a couple of the Moth radio hours here in Central Phoenix. They're really fun to watch. So perhaps we could take it offline and talk a little bit about your storytelling past. Okay, so let's dig right in. So why exactly did you decide to run for the Flagstaff Unified School District School Board? And what issues do you feel like are the most pressing for the district? And since Christine went first, we'll go ahead and have Eric go first this time. So again, why did you want to run? And what issues do you think are the most pressing for your district?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on it in my intro a little bit, but I do believe in the power of education for all. I think Flagstaff is such an amazing place to live. And if we want strong, vibrant communities, the heart of that is the public school system. I really do believe that. I believe that education does have the power to, lift all ships, so to speak. I've seen that happen with my kids. I've seen that happen with other people's kids. I've seen how they've grown. My daughter started here when she was in kindergarten, and I've seen her become a critical thinking member of society in just a short while. One of the reasons why I did run, one of the issues that I see is like, I'm kind of tired on seeing the community, not the community, but I'm tired of seeing attacks on education and public education in particular. And I wanted to jump in and see what I could do to help.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And the same question goes to you, Christine.
Right. So I mentioned that I started volunteering on the PTO when my son was young in the 3rd grade. And that really kind of gave me an insider's view of, I always knew that Arizona schools were underfunded, but I really was able to see just how that underfunding and disenfranchisement impacts our schools, teachers, and students on a daily basis. And then how that impacts different schools within our district as well, based on the socioeconomic status of the neighborhood that they're in or the makeup of the students that attend. And so when the pandemic happened, a lot of that inequity was really magnified. I think it really highlighted a lot of inequities in our society. We saw how much it hurt everyone, but especially low income and minority community members. And we saw just how crucial our schools are for our entire community's well-being and ability to function. And so we needed community care more than ever. And as someone that I've greatly benefited from community care, I wanted to try and find a way to provide it. And I tried to get more providing support and resources to families in Flagstaff during the pandemic. And just that entire experience made me even more fiercely protective of public education. So when I heard that there would be 2 open seats on the school board this coming year, I started to think, I should run. And before I knew it, I was getting texts and messages and emails from friends, family members, colleagues saying that I needed to do it, that it was time. And I realized that I needed to do it now. It was time for me to step up, be a leader, and work to protect our schools so they can continue to serve and even, better provide quality education to Flagstaff students, all Flagstaff students. And I think we all can see that this is a really crucial election year. Education is under attack at the state level. And the place where we have a lot of power to protect it is here on the local level. And so as a school board member, my overarching goal is to protect and strengthen our schools and public education as a whole. But that includes working for equity in every corner of the school system. It means making community-minded decisions that are inclusive of the needs of all students, all community members, and ensuring that our schools are known for academic excellence, but that they're also meeting the safety and social and emotional needs of its students and staff. And so I just think now is the time for us to make sure that we're ready to fight for our schools.
Great, and because you brought up the term equity, and that is something that we've been hearing a lot about lately. It's a whistle word almost, right? Like equity is for some reason seen as a bad thing. I think maybe it's misunderstood. I myself have attended various diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings, implicit bias trainings, things like that. And, I'm a kid from the 70s. So I believe that knowledge is power. I watched all of those Schoolhouse Rock videos. And so to me, learning more about ourselves, our community is really important. I don't think it's a partisan issue. I think it's an issue that all of us should be interested in. So a big question that's going around these days with regards to school board candidates and schools in general, teachers, et cetera, there seems to be this kind of push-pull with the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So do you support programming that includes diversity, equity, and inclusion training for teachers, staff, and students in the Flagstaff Unified School District? And so because Eric went first the last time, we're going to go ahead and start with Christine. So do you support programming that includes diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI trainings to students, staff, and teachers in the district?
Absolutely, I do. I think it's crucial. I think it's crucial for making sure that every student is being treated fairly, that every student is getting what they need to succeed. I think it's really important for us to understand our differences, the ones that are visible and the ones that are invisible. And I think that those trainings really provide that. And it betters everybody. So it betters our administration because they're able to make sure they're being equity minded when they're hiring teachers. And then it betters our teachers because they're able to see their students as individuals from different backgrounds and pasts, and how that kind of might influence their roles in the classroom or their behavior in the classroom, or how they engage in their schoolwork or engage with their teacher. It's really important that we learn how to celebrate our differences and not be afraid to notice our differences, because there's nothing wrong with being different from one another. What's wrong is when we allow those differences to have us treated differently, or have us have different experiences and not be able to access the same tools. And so I absolutely support those programs. I think that they're really important for our students to learn about as well as they become community members and citizens of our democracy.
Great. Same question goes to you, Eric. Thank you for that, Christine. And the question again is, do you support programming that includes diversity, equity, and inclusion training for students, staff, and teachers in the district?
Absolutely. I mean, I think for me, it's really quite simple. I mean, I think it's honestly one of the probably central tenets of public education. I think it's extremely important to understand, celebrate, and coexist and learn from one another. We all have different experiences. We all have different backgrounds. And I think that makes us stronger as a community. So when you say, do I support diversity, equity, and inclusion in the classroom? 100,000%. I support that. I think it's, again, one of the very core central tenets of public education, in my opinion.
Thank you so much, both of you, for your answers. I'm curious too, just to give the people, especially people like me, I've been in Phoenix now for the last 31 years, or in the Phoenix area. I'm curious, how big is the district where you teach, or where you're running? And if you have any numbers, any demographics on that, that would be really helpful. This is a total improv question, but I think especially since we probably have a lot of people who don't know that much about the Flagstaff Unified School District, it would be helpful for our members and attendees to know. So we'll go ahead and start with Eric. What is the makeup of your district, Eric? And then if you want to add anything to this one, Christine, this will be just a little bit more free form for everybody so that we can get a better understanding of that district.
Offhand, I don't have the exact number of school or kids that are attending Flagstaff Unified School District right now, but I do know it's one of the largest geographic school areas in the entire country. I mean, buses literally run nonstop all day from corners of the reservation all the way down to Muntz Park to out to parks, and it's such a huge geographically diverse area that I don't think people realize just how massive it is. I mean, we live in the second largest county in the country. And this area that the FUSD covers is just massive.
And I'm assuming, okay, look, thank you so much, Lindsay. On top of it, home to nearly 9,100 students and 15 comprehensive school sites. And I mean, you mentioned too, Eric, and if you want to piggyback off this one, Christine, that would be great. You talked about serving folks that are on the reservation, the fact that you are also a very large district with very diverse needs and rural students. So do you want to touch on that a little bit about the diversity, Christine?
Absolutely, yeah. So I don't know the exact numbers, but I know that about 30% of our students are Hispanic and 30% are Native American, and I believe about 48% are white. And so there's definitely a lot of diversity in our schools. We also have, like you said, students from the reservation. We have students that are bused in from the reservation into Flagstaff. We have a school on the reservation. And then we also have a lot of undocumented families as well. And that's really important to consider when we talk about how our schools are serving the students in them.
Great, thank you. And again, it was very improv of me to ask that question, but it's something that, especially here where in Maricopa County proper, we have 58 school districts, right? And you all serve a much larger area and incredibly diverse. So I think it's just really important because I think a lot of times too, especially when we talk about what happens at the legislative level, that we sometimes forget about these rural communities and the challenges that they face, especially with regards to things like transportation and access to internet and things like that. So thank you so much for being able to play along with me here. Speaking of the legislative session, you two, I'm sure, are people who really are in tune with what happens during our legislative session between January and, well, this time it was almost all the way to July, but didn't quite make it there. So I want to know, this past legislative session, we saw a number of education or school-focused bills that became law. And which of these bills gave you the most concern? And how would you handle its implementation as a board member? So again, I'll ask the question again. We're going to start with Christine this time. We saw a number of education/school focused bills become law. Some of them were just passed through committee, but many of them became law. Which of those bills gave you the most concern, and how will you handle its implementation as a board member? So Christine, go ahead and answer first, please.
So that's a great question, and it's hard to pick just one because unfortunately our legislature is known for just micromanaging, I guess, or complete overreach of creating laws that impact our students. And many of our legislators have never been educators. They've never been in the schools. They've never been administrators of schools. And they think that it's their role to create these laws that greatly impact our students and our teachers. And they didn't even talk to them and ask them what they thought. And so that seems to happen every year. It's a painstaking spring where we watch, bill after bill roll out and hope that they don't pass committee. I'd say that one of the bills that gave me the most concern was some of these bills that attack our LGBTQ students and their ability to feel safe in our schools and be included in school activities. Bills that say that transgender girls can't play on girls' sports teams. I think it's horrific, and I think that it hurts not just our LGBTQ students, but it hurts our entire community because it basically creates an atmosphere in which that kind of exclusion is accepted and normalized. So I'd say that is one of the bills that entertained the idea of not allowing teachers to talk about different family styles. I mean, I'm a single mom by choice. My kids don't have a dad, and they deserve to have that experience and that story honored. And there's nothing wrong with them having a different family life. It's really important that we learn how to not allow religious ideals or values come into the classroom and influence the way we talk about people's families. Just something as basic as that. So I find those to be very concerning.
Great, thank you so much. And I think maybe one of the bills that you're referencing is probably HB 2161 that would not allow teachers to, they would be forced to essentially out their students or not even be able to perform surveys, which as a former teacher myself is as part of the very important work that I would do. And the students, actually, the feedback from the students was like, oh my gosh, Ms. Castine, nobody ever asked me these questions about my family and my home life. So I appreciate that answer. Eric, the same question goes to you. Out of the very many flurry of bills that we saw go through the legislature this legislative session, which one caused you the most concern?
The one that made me the most angry was there was quite a few of them. The unqualified teachers in the school is among them, but I think the one that really got to me was the expansion of vouchers. The legislature overrode the will of the people of Arizona, and it really angered me. I just really truly believe is that instead of expanding vouchers, let's try for a while fully funding public education. Pay teachers what they're worth. Let's fix and repair, upgrade, and expand programs where they're needed. Let's try this first. I think if that were the case, I think that this voucher expansion would be even less popular than it is now. And as a school board member and a citizen, I'm not going to stop being a vocal advocate against further expansion and taking money away from schools. So that's my answer.
Yeah, and now we're seeing that one of our local organizations here in Arizona, Save Our Schools, has put forth a ballot initiative because, again, it does seem like the will of the voters has essentially just been ignored. I won't even say overturned, it's just been ignored. So thank you both for those really thoughtful answers. I appreciate you. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about the culture wars while we're at it, because we saw a huge flurry of kind of culture wars. Christine touched upon it just a little bit, with regards to our LGBTQ youth and being able to talk to them about their own struggles and their own needs. So I'm curious, do you support, and this one, we're going to start with you, Eric. Do you support programming that includes comprehensive sex ed for the school district of Flagstaff Unified? So question again, starting with Eric, do you support programming that includes comprehensive sex ed, age appropriate, medically accurate sex education for students?
To me, this one's very simple. I absolutely agree with age appropriate, medically appropriate sex education that is inclusive to all. I think that that's another part that I think needs to be added in there is like that this should be something that should be available and ready for all. I mean, we're trying to teach the future, our future community members. And I think if we don't have this, we're doing a disservice to them and for future generations.
See, I should just keep my arrow hovering over the mute button because
I know that's what I'm doing. It's kind of working, but yeah.
I have two windows open and I've got another screen over there. Sometimes it gets a little bit messy. So same question to you, Christine. Would you be open to the idea of bringing comprehensive sex ed to the students of Flagstaff Unified?
Absolutely. I think it's incredibly important. I think it's crucial that we're equipping our students with this knowledge. I think it allows them safety in relationships and decision-making, and medical knowledge that is completely appropriate and important for them to have. I think that it would be great if we had like a parents' night where they can come and attend and learn what's going to be taught. We already know that these are only taught to students that have permission slips signed. So it is a choice to opt in or opt out your student. And I think it would be great for parents to be able to have just like an hour overview of what's going to be taught before they sign that permission slip, in order to make sure that they feel included in what's going to be taught, and fully transparent and aware. That's one of the things that I really love about a program that we have been able to find sex education through for my teenager. One of the things that is required is that the parents come and learn about what their kids are going to be learning about. And so, yeah, the answer is yes, absolutely.
Great, thank you so much. Again, I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there to attendees of the webinar or folks who are joining us on Facebook. I see that we do have a couple of questions coming in, so I want to invite everybody. If you have questions specific to the candidates tonight, I would love to see them in the chat, and we'll get to those in probably about a half an hour or so. Although I want to commend both of you for coming in so far under time with your concise answers. I appreciate that, because then I don't have to do the whole countdown thing. It makes our job a little bit easier. Okay, so let's go ahead and take this next question. So what approach do you think that schools and districts should have with regards to student discipline? This time we're going to go with Christine first, and I'll repeat the question. What approach should schools and districts have with regards to student discipline, Christine?
That's a great question, and one that I have really changed my answer on after having become a foster parent and seeing how I'm learning a lot about trauma-informed care and trauma-informed schools. I think that it's really important that we are seeing the needs of students that we're finding are having behaviors that might need to be disciplined. I think that kids do well when they can do well. And I think if there's kids that aren't doing well, it's because there are needs that aren't being met at home, or just even basic needs like not enough food, or not enough safety in the classroom, not enough safety at home. And so I think that it's really important that when we talk about discipline, we talk about meeting unmet needs and then teaching. So discipline should always be a way of teaching a child, not a way of just stopping a behavior. I think that it's also really important that we as a district are utilizing practices like restorative practices. This FUSD has rolled out restorative practices in I think at least 2 or 3 test schools, and I'm excited to see that move district-wide. I think it's an awesome program, and it sounds like, from what I've been hearing from the board updates, it sounds like it's been an amazing experience for teachers and students. I do think it's important that we're tracking our discipline and making sure that we aren't seeing any implicit bias or prejudice that's influencing which students are being disciplined. Yeah, that's.
Okay, great. I'm gonna just add a couple of comments that I'm seeing in the chat here. This one is regarding comprehensive sex ed. I believe they do provide an overview, though Mike's, and this is coming from, oh shoot, I can't see what her name is. Oh, Katie. I believe they do provide an overview, though. Through my experience teaching over the last 11 years, only 2 have declined permission. And yeah, that is true, that Arizona is essentially an opt-in state. Like you have to have the permission form signed. So I just wanted to add that. And then Christine is coming in and saying that all schools in Flagstaff use restorative practices. So Eric, this question will go to you then. What role should schools and districts have with regards to student discipline?
You know, I think it's, oh, am I muted? No, I'm not. You know, I think it's kind of like, you know, as a parent of 2 kids, is like, I think sometimes it's kind of like, it depends on the situation. It really depends on the student and what happened. You know, I think Christine kind of nailed it, is like, I think, first of all, we want to try to get to the root of where the discipline may be coming from, where the discipline may be stemming from. And I think, you know, again, going back to the lack of funding for schools here in Arizona is, you know, like, I think one way that could help with discipline, one way that could probably make that a little bit stronger is to increase the number of psychologists and nurses and counselors that we have in school, so that discipline issues, they'll never go away. But I think if we can kind of help figure out where the kids are coming from, I think that would go a long way for that.
Great, thank you again for your concise answers. So this one, of course, is kind of this is the thing that our parents care the most about. And that is, what role, if any, should religion play in our public schools? So Eric, you answered that question last. You're going to go ahead and go first this time. What role, if any, should religion play in our public schools?
Yeah, it's public education. It's not non-secular education. You know, I believe in the separation of church and state, and that religious beliefs should not dictate policy at all at the school board level. That said, I believe that individuals who choose to express their beliefs, that should not be infringed, and they should be given, you know, a time and space to do that where applicable.
Again, with all these concise answers. So Christine, same question to you. What role, if any, should religion play in our public schools?
So, you know, religion is a part of our society, and sometimes that's really toxic and unfortunate for our world. And sometimes it's a really positive thing for individuals and families. For a lot of folks, religion really serves as their culture. That's the tie to their culture. And so I respect and understand that religion is really important to a lot of families, but in order to keep our schools and our learning spaces safe, we have to make sure that we are respecting a separation between church and state, and that's to make it safe for everybody. I do think that it's important for religious I think it's important for students to learn about religions in general, but unfortunately there's such a privilege and a preference in our society for Judeo-Christian religions that it can be really dangerous, and it can push upon the freedoms of students that don't identify with Judeo-Christian religions or don't identify with any religion at all. And so that has to be done really carefully. But ultimately, as far as policy and curriculum development or governing goes, religious values and ideals should play no role whatsoever in those things.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine. All right. Let's go ahead and let's see. Like I said, you guys are coming in so under time. It's amazing. Your answers are so succinct. We might even be able to wrap this up a little bit earlier than we normally do. But let me move on to the next question. And that question is, what role should standardized testing play in driving school programming and policies? So I'll repeat that again, and go, Christine, you're going to go first this time. What role should standardized testing play in driving school? I have that right? Christine's going first. Yes. What role should standardized testing play in driving school programming and policies? Go ahead, Christine.
So I think that we all know, and if you don't know, it's important to learn that school standardized testing is more likely measuring the socioeconomic status of the students in the school than it is measuring anything else. And so it's really important that if we are using standardized testing, we're using it as data to show what our students may need more education in. It needs to be a tool for our teachers to be able to use to inform how they teach, the effectiveness of what they're teaching, who's learning and who's not, who's mastering these concepts and who's not, but it should not be used to inform school programming or policies. It's a data tool, but it in no way should a teacher be held responsible for their students' results on a standardized test. Just because we know that oftentimes those results are based on whether or not that kiddo went home and had a warm meal that night, and less based on whether or not the teacher was effective teaching that subject.
Great. Same question to you, Eric. What role should standardized testing play in driving school programming and policies?
Yeah, I think we have to have some kind of metrics to, I guess, measure a student's mastery of a subject, but I don't think standardized testing should be the end all and be all by any stretch of the imagination. I think kids learn differently and express knowledge differently and express their mastery of, of the subjects in just completely crazy, just different ways. I see that in my own kids. One is a more visual learner, one's a more repetitive learner. And, so I'd like to see a variety of metrics to complement standardized testing. I'd like to see different ways of evaluating, how a student has knowledge or how a student shows, again, mastery of a subject. I mean, I think those are as important, if not more important, than standardized testing as it currently is.
Great. Thank you both for those thoughtful answers. I appreciate you. So let's see. So based on your understanding, and we're going to start with Eric this time. Based on your understanding, Eric, what are the main roles and responsibilities of school board members? We've had a tumultuous couple of years, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand this. And so based on your understanding, what are the main roles and responsibilities of school board members? And Eric, you're going to go ahead and go first this time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of new to this in my own sense, but like, it's to set policy for the school. It's to oversee the superintendent. That's the at least up here in the FUSD is the only employee, if you will, of the school board, and it's to serve as an appellate board when things come up out of the individual schools, to address that. As I think to establish the policy is extremely important. To review it with the superintendent is, I think, extremely important. So that's my understanding of the role of the school board.
Great. And same question to you, Christine. What is your understanding of what the main roles and responsibilities are of school board members?
I think this is such a good question because I do think people don't quite realize that the school board isn't there to inform education law statewide. We can advocate as individuals, but that's not the role. So the actual role of school board members is, set the direction of the school board, hire and evaluate the superintendent, help in the development of the budget, approve and monitor the budget, approving purchases and developing policies, approving curriculum materials, adopting the school calendar, making sure that we are overseeing tax dollar funds, including the bonds that are passed locally or any overrides, and then just monitoring progress towards the goals and the vision set by the district.
And, you said something about bonds and overrides. So again, I'm going off script here, but I'm a little curious. I don't know. I know that there are a small handful of districts here in Maricopa County that really struggle with bonds and overrides. So I'm now kind of curious, is Flagstaff Unified School District a district that is friendly to the idea of passing these bonds and overrides. I mean, I guess this is almost more of a discussion, and Christine, since you answered last, I'll start with you, but has the community been supportive of bonds and overrides for your community in the past?
They have, and we are so grateful for that because we've been able to do amazing things with those funds. And so the last bond was passed in 2018, and we were able to completely rebuild the Killip Elementary School. So it is a brand new building. It's incredible, and it's going to be opening in a month for students to attend. And it's an incredible building. And so basically the only reason we've been able to keep up with the capital needs of our district is because of bonds. And so we're really grateful to our community for stepping up. It's unfortunate that our community has to step up. The reason that the community does have to pass these bonds and that these costs end up on the back of our Flagstaff community members is because the state fails to fully fund our schools and fails to fund capital improvement projects that are necessary to include students. We needed so many adaptive changes done at one school to make it accessible for individuals in wheelchairs. We have to be able to make those changes. And so it's great that our community has been very favorable in passing those bonds. And so this fall, there'll be a bond and an override as well. And the override, I believe, is for I haven't read as much as I need to about it, but I believe special education programs are in there, among other really crucial programs.
And so, Eric, I'm going to just ask you a slightly different question based on your perspective now as a candidate, as an involved community member. Would you be able to gauge the, I guess, pushback, for these bonds and overrides? Have you seen an increase or a decrease in community members who are supporting these? Are there board members that maybe currently sit on the Flagstaff Unified Board who don't support them? Or what's the general feeling with regards to these kinds of bonds and override elections within the community itself?
Yeah, I don't think people are excited about any new taxes at all, especially with under current inflation. But I think Flagstaff is an amazing community, and I think people here mostly get that we need to do this awful thing that we have to do is to do these bond overrides every so often, because like Christine said, is that we're just not funding the schools the way that we should be, and people here get that, and they want to support the schools. I think overall, and I think that's kind of amazing about this community that we live in.
Great, thank you. Again, I appreciate you supporting my improv freeform way of doing things tonight. So this is a question that I actually had in my notes, but one of our attendees tonight asked a very similar question. So I'm going to go ahead and answer this one coming from Mary Grove. And Mary Grove says, do you have any concerns about school shootings? And what are your ideas about how to keep our schools and communities safe from gun violence? So I'll repeat the question, and Eric is going to start this question. Do you have any concerns about school shootings? And what are your ideas about how to keep our schools and communities safe from gun violence?
Yeah, absolutely. I have concerns about school shooting. I mean, I think this is literally every parent and probably community member's nightmare. It's not an easy answer though. I think in the big abstract way of things is like, I think we need to do whatever we can as citizens, as school board members, as we need to advocate for the change and to help refine state policy. But as a member, I think we have to plan for these unfortunate things. It's unfortunate that we have to plan for this, but I think we do. I don't think more guns at school is the answer at all. I think perhaps, for what a school board member can do, for what the school board can do, I think the greatest response, which is not enough, but I think the greatest response might be to, again, increase the number of school counselors and psychologists, to just try to alleviate some of the causes of school violence and school shootings. And again, to just do really anything we can.
Same question to you, Christine. Your thoughts about these school shootings and how you would handle it as a board member.
I think it's horrific. I think it's terrible that our children are having to grow up in a very real fear that that could happen to them. And I think it's traumatizing. I think it's traumatizing for this entire generation. And so I, as a school board member, I advocate on a broader level for common sense gun laws and gun control. Obviously, that is not within my reach as a school board member, but as a school board member, what I can do is work with the rest of the board and the superintendent and faculty and staff to develop policy that can keep folks as safe as possible. And so maybe that includes passing maybe that includes working together to choose to write letters to our representatives, urging them to pass common sense gun laws. Maybe it means creating policies for what we can control, right? Like maybe we need to explicitly spell it out that even if the state allows it, we will not be allowing guns on our school campuses, whether it's for teachers to use or otherwise. And then also, like Eric said, including more counselors. I would love to know that every kid in an FUSD school is known by someone, that someone knows who they are, knows their story, and knows what they do when they go home. I think that is really important part of making sure that we are aware of where kids are and what they're thinking. Everyone says, oh, he was a quiet guy, we didn't really know much about him. Well, there shouldn't be any kids we don't know anything about. We need to make sure that we know our kids, we know our students, we know what they struggle with, and we can hopefully work to watch out for red flags that might indicate that someone is in an unhealthy mindset or situation with access to a weapon that could have this happen. But ultimately, I think it comes down to common sense gun laws.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and go back real quick because this was another question that I had. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, but Christine is asking the question, what do you see as the most critical issue currently facing Flagstaff Unified School District today? So that's part one. And I think, well, I'm going to just go ahead and stick with part one for right now, Christine. What do you see as the most critical issue currently facing FUSD today? And Christine, you're going to go ahead and start with this question from the other Christine.
So it's definitely hard to pick just one that is the most important, but I think we can pick something that trickles down and creates or solves a lot of other problems. And so what I'm thinking of as one of the biggest challenges to the FUSD school board is a lack of equity and income inequality community-wide. And so that inequity comes in the form of a lack of funding provided by our state to the high cost of living in Flagstaff and the lack of housing in Flagstaff, making it difficult for families and teachers to live here, to students coming to school hungry and unable to focus on learning. So I think all of those things influence our schools in one way or another. If we can't have families afford to live here, then our enrollment numbers go down. If the schools aren't able to look to the general public like they're performing because the kids aren't able to come to school and learn because their families are struggling financially, they're not having their needs met, then we lose students to charter schools, right? We can't have high quality teachers if we can't afford to pay them well. And even if they are paid well, if they can't afford to find a house here, then we can't keep teachers here either. And so making sure that we are using our resources, the limited resources we have, making sure we're using them in a way that benefits the best interests of our entire community. So I think a lot of what's happening on the local level and in certain school districts, and especially in ours, is there's a lot of really loud people wanting to get involved with the idea that they're there to advocate for their kid. And it's great. I'm glad you're advocating for your kid. And I'm glad I'm advocating for my kid. But my role as a school board member is to advocate for all of the kids. And so I can listen to you about your concerns. I can understand why you feel the way you do and believe you that your student is being harmed by X, Y, and Z. But it's still my job to use data and the best interests of the entire community to make my decisions. And so making sure that folks understand that being heard but is not the same as having someone do what you want them to do. So I can hear you as a school board member, but I'm going to make my decisions in ways that benefit the best interests of our entire school body.
Great. And so the same question to you, and then Christine Fredericks in the audience, I'm going to ask the second part here in just a second. But for right now, Eric, the first part of this question is, what do you see as the most critical issue currently facing FUSD today?
I think if that voucher expansion becomes law, I'm just sick and tired of seeing money being drained away from schools where it just doesn't need to be. I think it makes it harder for teachers to stay. I think it makes it harder for parents. I think it makes it harder for programs that are successful. I don't think we would see the full detriment of these voucher expansions for quite a while. To me, that's the biggest challenge today is like, let's not take any more money away from schools. It's just becoming heartbreaking to me.
Thank you for those thoughtful answers. And so the second part, and I think because they kind of go hand in hand right now, because you both kind of touched upon this issue. The second question in Christine's Q&A here is, what is your position on charter and private schools? And feel free to be as brief in this as you want to, because I think we've kind of asked and answered this, but I want to honor Christine. So what is your position on, and it is kind of almost two different questions, right? Like, she's talking about charters, she's talking about private schools. You brought up the voucher expansion bill, Eric. So, if it's a two-parter, go ahead and give us both answers for that, Eric.
I'm sorry, you kind of broke up a little bit. So can you say that one more time for me?
Sure. And it really is kind of it's almost two different questions, but what is your position on charter and private schools? You both kind of already touched on this, and we talked about the bill that was signed into law by Governor Ducey, and the fact that SOS AZ is, putting forward a ballot initiative to get the voters' input on that, even though we've already given our input on that. So what is your position on charter and private schools? And I admittedly am very unfamiliar about the landscape, specifically with charters and privates in Coconino County. So Eric, what's your position on charters and privates?
I think that they work for some families and some students, but I don't think state funding should go toward that. I think that, if it ever got to the point where we had the FUSD fully funded in the way that it should be, then let's discuss charter schools and, at that point. But that's my answer.
Great. And I like a nice short answer. So same question to you, Christine. What is your position on charter and private schools in FUSD?
So it's definitely different. The only private schools we have in FUSD are religious private schools, at least as far as I know. And I don't believe that state tax dollars should be being used at private schools. Private schools are allowed to discriminate. They're allowed to violate, a child's right to a fair education. And I think that that's inappropriate if it's being funded by state tax dollars. And so as far as private schools go, I hope that that the expansion, the referendum for the expansion of vouchers is able to be pushed forward, and that we have a chance for voters to say again how they feel about tax dollars going to private schools. And I want to make clear that I don't mean changing the voucher system as it stands now. I know that there are families who need to use private schools to meet their special education students' needs. And that's a topic for another day. My concerns is when it comes to just anybody and universal expansion, just anybody being able to choose a religious school with public tax dollars. As far as charter schools go, I think we have a huge problem in our state with for-profit charter schools. And I think that is really unfortunate. However, in Flagstaff, for the most part, most of our charter schools are small. I think one or two of them are public, the rest are private, and not private schools, but privately owned. But they're still not for profit, like company owned charter schools. And so I do wish that charter schools had to follow the same standards as public schools since they're getting the same money. But I understand that different students learn best in different environments. ultimately, I would really like to see districts be able to be fully funded so that they can provide those different environments. Some kids need to be in a smaller setting, and oftentimes that's what charter schools provide, is a smaller setting, and then those students are able to succeed better. So it would be really nice if we were able to have magnet programs that covered all of those needs within the district. But until our schools are fully funded, that's not going to happen. We have to focus on fully funding our public district schools.
Thank you. And I want to make sure, Lindsay, if I overlook anything, please let me know, but I think that I've covered most of the things in the chat. Again, if you have questions and you're here on the webinar, go ahead and put them into the Q&A, and then we'll be able to answer them live. But for right now, so we're basically, because you both are so efficient in your answers, and I appreciate that, we're going to go ahead and fully open it up to the questions from the audience. We'll see how many we get. And if we don't get a whole bunch, well, then, you know, you get to go ahead and enjoy your time with your family a little bit sooner. So here's a question coming from Kate, and this is a question to both of you. Great question too, Kate, by the way. Because enrollment numbers equals money, what are some things that FUSD should do to compete and retain, compete for and retain students that are looking at charter schools as an option? You kind of touched on that answer a little bit, Christine. So again, the question is, we're always thinking about enrollment now with public schools, right? And especially with the you know, explosion of charter schools over the past 30 years or so, with the fact that we have these voucher expansions. So we know that the money is supposed to follow the kid to the seat of their classroom. Enrollment equals money. So what are some things that FUSD can do to compete for and retain students that are looking at charter schools as an option, Christine?
So that's a great question. And I think that it is really important to recognize that some of our enrollment numbers going down is because Flagstaff is such a hard place to live in, that we are seeing families leave. And so that is why a lot of our projections are down. But we do also struggle with enrollment because charter schools are very appealing to a lot of folks. There seems to be this public image that a charter school is the prize, and that's what you get into. And if you can't get into, then you settle for the district schools. We need to go back to the days when the district school was the first thought, where you realized that your neighborhood school was what you wanted, that was the prize. I have to talk a little bit about the fact that when I was young and my son was young, I really thought that the best way for him to get a good education was to go to a charter school. I really didn't understand at the time that public schools are able to provide enriching education, and that oftentimes it's billed or marketed as that the charter school can provide a better education, but that's not actually the case. That's not actually what we see when we look at test scores, right? So ultimately, my son ended up going to a public school, and he ended up going to one of the public schools in Title I school. And most folks were like, oh, my son had the most amazing experience. That has been such an incredible school experience for him. He was able to go to Nashville for chess championships. He was able to go to the Johnson Space Center when his team won the robotics competition, all with the school, not because of me, not because of my money, but because the school was able to provide that. And that was our neighborhood school. And I just really had it proved to me that it's not about you know, this marketing that looks like charter schools are superior. They're not. The public schools need to be shown to the community as the amazing academic excellence that they offer. That needs to be shown to our community. And so I don't know if it's as much as like attending community events the way that a lot of these charter schools do to make sure that we're able to show community members exactly what's going on in our public schools, but just trying to give a better idea to the public of what's actually happening in our schools and how amazing they really are.
The first time that I had to do that. Great, thank you. So same question to you, Eric. What are some things that you think that FUSD can do to compete for and retain students that are looking at charter schools as an option?
This kind of relates to my day job, you know, as I think communication. You know, when I was out gathering signatures around, I heard from so many people that, that they chose to send their children to charter schools because they didn't think FUSD offered this or had that, or had the option to learn Spanish or had accelerated math. And I just thought, how could you not know? Why was this not your first choice? Did you ask anyone? Did you follow up with anyone? And I just, and the answers I would hear is they would hear better communication from some of the charter schools on what they had to offer. Christine kind of hit on it, is I think some people had this idea that like charter schools were better because they offered this program. And I would kind of follow up on that with them. And I would say is like, do you think that those programs were offered in FUSD? And the answer would more often than not be, I don't know, or I don't think so, but I'm not sure.
So yeah, communication is key, and that's tough. It's tough to tackle, and
again and keep communicating, because people do have short attention spans, and it sometimes takes 5, 6, 7 times. And as a school board member, I would love to push out the great stories, the great successes, the great programs that the school has. I mean, I think in some ways that's entirely appropriate for a school board member to do, and do consistently and constantly.
sure. And especially I think at a time where we're watching school board candidates and even sitting school board members who are actively advocating for the disenfranchisement of our public schools. So again, thank you for your very thoughtful answers on that question. And again, because we are, I've run out of questions. You're both so efficient in your answers. I'm going to go ahead and go back to another audience question. This one seems really specific to FUSD, and this one's coming to somebody from Facebook. And the question is, and we're going to start with Eric this time. And I hope that, I don't know if this is, I don't know the schools in Flagstaff, so I apologize, but it says, what are your thoughts on the lake at Killip School? And I don't know if that's a typo, but Killip School and the safety of our kids. So what are your thoughts on the lake at Killip School? So I'm assuming that Killip School is one of the many schools in your district, and that there's a lake on the property, and that there's a safety issue with regards to the lake. So I'm hopeful that Eric, you understand that question and you can go ahead and answer it.
I do understand the question, but I guess I don't know enough about the details about why it's unsafe, or why, I don't know the inner workings of that currently. So I guess I would say is, I don't know.
And perhaps to that Facebook, it's put out by Dennis. So Dennis, if you have any clarifiers on that one to give us a little bit more insight, that could be helpful. But Christine, do you have any thoughts about that question coming from Dennis about the lake at Killip School and the safety of children at that school?
Yeah, and I can totally understand why he's concerned. So essentially, because of the museum fire that was in Flagstaff, I think 3 years ago now, maybe only 2 years ago, we have some pretty scary flooding that goes right through Sunnyside, and Killip School was right in the line of that flooding. And in fact, the school flooded so badly that they decided to tear it down early and move those students over to a different location until the new building was built. One of the solutions that the school district and the city of Flagstaff were able to come to was to create like a retainage basin in the area where the baseball fields and the soccer fields would be, and then to have the fields be above that. And it's supposed to drain within 2 or 3 days, I believe, after filling up. And so I can understand feeling nervous that if there's a lot of water there, if that's where the water is rushing to, that it can actually put kids in danger. We live in Sunnyside, my kids will go to Killip, that is our home school. And as a woman who wants to be able to let her kids run around and have fun, I would worry about them being alone. But ultimately, we have to remember that this was a solution that was created because it keeps kids safer. It keeps the entire neighborhood safer. And so just trying to trust the professionals that have come up with this solution and understand that I believe the fields will be covered or locked at all times, and that there isn't a risk of drowning. We also have sirens in that area now that is going to be hopefully very proactive in making sure that kids know that if they hear those sirens going off during a rainstorm, they need to get into a house or on higher ground. So hopefully that answers this question. I probably do need to learn a bit more about what safety threats there might be, but as far as I understand, it's been addressed.
So I'm assuming too, again, as somebody who's in Maricopa County and not Coconino County, I remember, I think it was last summer, seeing videos of flash flooding. Is that, and I see both of you nodding your head. Okay, so because those videos were pretty darn terrifying, you know, along with the videos that we saw coming from like Germany, you know, when we're dealing with some climate issues that we've never had to deal with before. And I think it had to do with like a burn scar or something like that. And the fact that, yeah, there's all these new terms that we're all going to have to become more familiar with as we deal with the effects of climate change. So that actually was a really thoughtful question, Dennis. And, you know, especially as my children are in their 20s, but as a parent, I would want to make sure that my kids are safe and that the school is doing everything that they can to keep them safe. So thank you for your thoughtful answers on that one. And then Christine is coming in here on the webinar chat, and she's saying, in conjunction with the city, the flooding concern should be mitigated. So, you know, I hopefully you all have good partnerships with the city of Flagstaff and the folks who govern in the city of Flagstaff so that you can work on those different problems together. All right, it looks like, let me check. I'm going to check the Q&A again real quick. Oh gosh, we do still have some. Oh, good. Christine again. Thank you, Christine Fredericks. She's asking, can you please comment, and this is going to go to Eric first, please comment on FUSD's management of the COVID pandemic. And we're going to take this piece by piece. FUSD's management of the COVID pandemic, did FUSD manage it well, and why or why not? So let's just start with that, because this is a multifaceted question that she's put into the chat. So comment on the management of the COVID pandemic. Did the district manage it well, and why or why not? And we'll start with Eric first.
Yeah, this was an unprecedented thing that happened. And I think it caught literally everybody off guard when this happened. You know, did FUSD manage it well? I think that they managed it as absolutely the best they could under the conditions and knowledge that they had. I was actually very impressed with how they, circled the wagon, so to speak, and try to do absolutely everything they could to keep kids in school. I think, in relation to masks, I understand that there was a lot of people that are upset with that. Listen, I understand the pushbacks against masks. Nobody wants to wear masks. Nobody likes to wear masks, but, I personally believe in science, and I think that FUSD follow the science. So, if I was in the same place, I don't think I would have done a whole lot different given the considerations that they had.
Same question goes to you, Christine. Did FUSD manage the COVID pandemic well? Why or why not?
I think that FUSD managed the COVID pandemic, like Eric said, the best that they could. Hindsight is 2020. If we could go back and do things differently, I think we all would. But I think that there were decisions made that were not easy and that had to be done using data and keeping the entire community's safety in mind, that weren't popular, that weren't fun, but that were a sacrifice that needed to be made to ensure the safety of our community. And so I think we have seen that it's really, really important that schools stay open. I think that requiring masks was one of the ways we ensured that schools could stay open. And I think that people, I don't think anybody got what they wanted, because none of us wanted to be in that situation in the first place, right? Who wants to live through a pandemic? Who wants to see our kids go through having to be isolated and separated from peers? Who wants to see kids going through losing grandparents to COVID? And I mean, we lost teachers and faculty and staff. And so there was no, there were no good, easy answers. Everything that was done with painstaking thought, and I just really feel for the board members that had to make those decisions in the face of such public scrutiny and anger. And ultimately, I think that they did the best that they could, and I'm grateful for their service during this time.
And I feel like that you answered the rest of Christine's question, because she basically said, what would you have done differently? What are your thoughts about ongoing mitigation plans in place at FUSD? The legislature this session has kind of answered that for all of us, right? What we're allowed to do now, what we're not allowed to do. So no matter what Flagstaff Unified decides to do, whenever the next pandemic hits, and it could be at any time, and we're seeing this BA 1.5 variant being very, really affecting communities. So I feel like that one's been asked and answered. So thank you, Christine. This one is coming from an anonymous attendee. The question here is, what do you believe the role of unions are in Flagstaff Unified School District? So I think, Christine, you answered last, so you're going to go first this time. What do you believe the role of unions are? And I'm assuming they're talking about teachers' unions. I'm not sure if they're talking about carpenters or sheet metal workers, but I'm assuming they mean teacher unions when they ask that question.
I think so, yes. So I think that kind of one of the issues that came up towards the end of this last school year was that our teachers union was asking for formal recognition from the board. And so they've been working on an agreement with the Flagstaff Education Association. And so my belief is that unions are important. I think that everyone deserves a right to organize, to have a voice at the table, especially folks who are working, especially the employed. I think that we have a lot to learn from teachers. And so I think it's important to be listening. In general, we should be listening whether they're unionized or not, but I think it's extra powerful for teachers to be able to work together to have bargaining ability and some bargaining power. So I'm supportive of a majority union. And I think that it's unfortunate that the fees are so high. I think that keeps a lot of teachers from joining that would otherwise join. So I would love to see the union become more accessible to teachers without costing them money that they already don't make enough money. But otherwise, I think that the unions play an important role in education.
So the same question is going to go to you, Eric. What do you believe the role of, and again, I'm assuming that the question here has specifically to do with teachers' unions. What do you think the role of unions are in the FUSD?
I fully support unions and the right to join unions and to create unions. I believe if that is what teachers, staff, faculty, whoever, carpenters, sheet metal workers, whoever, if they have a right to join unions. If they join a union, they should be respected and honored. And so, yeah, I've my entire life I've been pro-union. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, they're all union members. And so I think that is, if that is what is important to individuals, I think it's an individual choice, but I think it should be honored and respected 1000%.
Okay, and I think that now we're to the point. I'm going to actually go ahead. I see on Facebook that there's a bit of a follow-up with Dennis. I think this is more of a comment. This is about the Killip school, right? And the safety issue. Dennis says, I spoke to you about this. It would take only one tragedy. One child is too much. There is no fence around it to prevent kids from entering the school side. So I feel like now for me as an outsider from the Flagstaff Unified District, that this is where this question is coming from. And I feel again, like this question has been asked and answered, but Dennis Chavez, thank you so much for your follow-up. And, hopefully, and we're going to be putting it into the chat too, how to get a hold of both of these candidates so that you can talk about this at a more intimate level with them. And we'll go ahead. Oh, this is a great question. So, and it sounds like my dog's just turned on the TV again. I can hear the TV going, and that makes no sense because there's nobody else home except for me, but they sit on the couch and they flip anyway. So thank you. A question from above that might have gotten lost. Thank you for that. How will you deal, and this is such an important question in 2022, how will you deal with the stress and scrutiny of parents? There have been angry, inappropriate, and very politically based arguments by parents over the last 2 years. So as a board member coming in to a volunteer unpaid position, serving your community, how do you deal with the scrutiny of these parents, and how will you handle the stress? Great question. You are muted, Christine.
Okay. Sorry about that. So it's a really great question. And it's probably the one I get the most when I tell people that I'm running for school board, is they say, oh, are you sure that you want to deal with that? And like, things have gotten so ugly. And even my son was like, oh, mom, do you really want to have to get treated that way all the time? And I think it is unfortunate that in our society, we've gotten to the point where we have such toxic communications. We're not able to communicate with one another in a way that is peaceful, kind, productive. And so it's going to be a challenge, and it's something that I hope, and I've tried to practice this form of listening, helping people to feel heard, but making it clear that hearing you and understanding your experience does not mean that I am going to be, I guess, bullied into or away from any opinions. And so just restating over and over again, I hear you. I'm sorry that was your experience. This is what I believe as a representative serves the best interests of our entire community, our entire school district community. And then just kind of leaning on that as that's the facts, that's the basis, that's the truth. And yeah, people can be angry with me, and that's fine, but I'm not going to allow that to sway me into a certain opinion from a vocal minority or away from an opinion because of that anger.
Thank you. Same question goes to you, Eric. So how will you deal with the stress and scrutiny of parents in FUSD?
I think in some ways it would come back to me being a parent and a private citizen. I would recommend to other parents, to be involved, be knowledgeable, join the conversation on what's going on with the schools, but understand that that parents, teachers, students, school board members, we all want students to succeed and be successful. Be involved in a collegial way. Know that everyone wants the best outcomes for students. And, I think a lot of times, I think some of these issues come up because there's a lack of good faith understanding, that there's an issue that they think that, that they're not being heard. Well, I think it's also on both sides that we just need to come back to a more collegial understanding of communicating with each other. That it sounds oversimplified, but that's kind of where I stand on that.
And I appreciate that answer. I miss the times when we could actually, have a seat at the table anywhere, even our own family Thanksgiving tables, without it becoming a heated political discussion where we all kind of dig our heels in. So I appreciate that from both of you very much. Nicole, and I hope Nicole's still here. I'm not sure if she is, because she said it was getting a bit late for her, but I think this is a great question too, because so often in 2022, we're so focused on all the bad. And Nicole asked the question, what is one of the best things about FUSD? I love this question, Nicole. So Eric, go ahead and answer that first.
It's the people, it's the teachers, it's the students, it's the parents, it's the community. I mean, this community, I think, really, they may not always express it in the best ways, but this school district is loved. These people are amazing individuals that are all trying to educate this community's children. That's my short answer. It's the people. It's the people all day, every day.
Sorry, I was reading the Facebook notes just to make sure I didn't miss anything. No, the feed is still up, just so you know, Lindsay. I can see it. There's not a lot going on over there. Question to you, Christine, same question. What's one of the best things about FUSD?
I love this question because I think it's so important that we know that our school board candidates love our school and are here to make it a better place. And so I agree with Eric. It's the people, it's the teachers, it's the families that love to get involved and see their students learning. And are excited to be a part of that learning community. It's the care that our administrators have for all of the students. I can't tell you how much I've seen just from my son's experience at Killip Elementary, watching those teachers give their all to every single one of their students again and again and again. And so it's definitely just the passion that and the pride that all of our teachers and administrators have in their schools that trickles down to the students and how proud they are of their schools. I am super excited about all of the programs that FUSD offers. I love telling folks, like, they'll be like, oh, I was thinking about sending my middle schooler here. And I'm like, well, did you know about this? Did you know about this? Did you know about this? There's just so much to be excited about, and the passion of our entire district about making sure that our community is taken care of is a beautiful thing.
Thank you both. I'm so sorry about my dogs. You can probably hear them in the background. Apparently there's a delivery driver in the neighborhood, and they, they're really good dogs, but if there's a stranger, they suddenly get murder in their hearts. It's terrible. They're in like, they're the most loving dogs on the planet. It's very distracting for me as well. So anyway, Kara is here in the Q&A, and she says, thank you both. And I apologize. Thank you both for putting yourselves forward for school board. I'm excited to see you both on the ballot. I'd like to hear, what's one innovation that you would bring to the school board and the current education system in our schools? And I'm assuming that when Kara says this, and I hope I pronounce your name right, that she means, in Flagstaff Unified specifically. So again, what's one innovation that you would like to bring to the school board and the schools within FUSD? And let's see, Christine, you went last, right, Christine? Correct me if I'm wrong.
So yeah, I did.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Sorry.
This is a great question. And, part of being on the school board, I think, is kind of learning more details about the school and seeing what will actually work in the school. So I don't want to be one of those folks that's like starry-eyed, pie in the sky, and then you get in there and you didn't consider all of these small little details that go into that. But I really do think that that one of the things that I'm excited to see is being able to provide a way to create partnerships within our schools and our local nonprofits and community agencies that kind of fill the roles that our students are needing. So, the school does a great job of linking up families that are in need of mental health resources with the guidance center. And that's great. And that serves a lot of kids. But I know that there are a lot of other behavioral healthcare organizations that work with more specific populations. I'm excited about the idea of discovering and creating those partnerships. I'd love to see our schools become a place where NACA, or Native Americans for Community Action, can come in and talk about the resources they provide to the community. I'm also really excited about the idea of communicating with the community about what our schools do. So getting more involved in community events, making sure that FUSD is present and bragging about themselves and educating the community about all the amazing things that we do. I also think, sorry, I know that was one thing, but it kind of goes along with it. But I love the idea of having more opportunities for parents to get involved. So the school's been doing some great webinars that talk about some of the new things going on, like the restorative practices. I'd love to see that happen more often, maybe in person if it's safe, but just opportunities for parents to come and get a better idea of what's going on in schools, or maybe we go to those parents, because I think that, having been a single mom who's working full time, you can want to get involved, but it can be really hard to know when, or to be able to fit it in your schedule at the times that it works. So I'd love to be able to find a way for parents to be able to have that access better.
Great. Same question to you. Like, what kind of innovative ideas would you like to bring to the Flagstaff Unified School District, Eric?
I'd like to see maybe just refining communication a little bit, finding what works for teachers and just keep it's never once we decided it's forever, what works for parents, what works for the community, and just keep celebrating the successes that these schools and these school district has. You know, it's just like, I don't think that that can ever end. So I don't know if that's innovative, but I think that that's something that, you know, I'm personally attracted to.
Well, in this day and age too, right? You know, I've had to recently familiarize myself with TikTok. And before that, it was Snapchat. And before that, it was Instagram. And before that, you know, like it just, so it's good to always have that, you know, growth mindset where I always have something else to learn. So I don't think that's a boring answer at all. I think it's mindful of the times that we live in so that we can reach people wherever they're at and meet them halfway. So it's only 7:25, folks. Isn't this great? You're all going to be able to get to, you know, stream your favorite program, or maybe have a cocktail or whatever comes next in your life, or put your kids to bed early so that you can, you know, do whatever comes next. So I'm going to go ahead, and let me make sure I don't see any more questions in the Q&A before I say that. Nope, no open questions. We're good to go. Eric ended that question. So Eric, I'm going to go ahead and let you wrap it up for us. Why should the folks within the Flagstaff Unified School District vote for you? And you're going to have 3 minutes for this answer, Eric.
Yeah, thank you all, and thank you, Secular Arizona, for having us both here. This was a great forum. Schools build communities, you know, strong communities support strong economies, healthy families, and opportunities for everyone. You know, and with your help and your vote, I'd like to continue doing the good work of the FUSD school board and to keep our community growing. You know, I think if you're running for school board, I think one strong element that you should have is you should be a strong proponent of public schools, that you should want to help grow and maintain the heart of this vibrant community. And I think I'm a candidate that could achieve that. And with your vote and with your help, I think we can keep the good work going.
Another succinct answer. Thank you. Christine, same question to you. Why should the good folks in Flagstaff Unified vote for you?
That was a great answer, Eric. I just wanted to compliment you because it was really just well put and succinct, and something I align with as well. I think that I am known in Flagstaff by those that do know me to be community minded. Like, I really have dedicated myself to community service, and this is just a next step in that dedication. And I think that I can be trusted with our schools. People know that I love public education. They know that I have a heart for folks who are, you know, minorities or underrepresented. They know that my goal is to make sure that everybody is being taken care of. And so I think that knowing that that is who I am in my heart and who I am in my goal to serve our schools and serve our community, I think that I am a great candidate to be, you know, entrusted with our students' best interests.
Thank you both so much for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and let everybody know that we have some fantastic events coming up. My goodness. I think that Lindsay's probably going to go ahead and put them up on the screen for us so that we can see. But Thursday on July 21st at 6 p.m., we have a reproductive rights, justice, and religion, a panel discussion. We have folks who are coming from Judaism, Islam, Christianity, even the Satanic Temple and more, who support reproductive justice. Because though people like to say that it is their religious freedom to be able to dictate what other people do, there's like a whole bunch of religions out there. And so I'm very much looking forward to this. On Friday, July 22nd at 12 p.m. we have Catherine Joyce, who is a renowned writer, amazing. And she's really studied the Christo-fascist attacks on the LGBTQ community. Very much looking forward to that. And then, of course, we have our seventh candidate forum for school board candidates in the Paradise Valley Unified School District here in Maricopa County, which, by the way, I think there's like 11 candidates who are running for that. Did I miss something, Lindsay? Please correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
and then, of course,
that's it.
Okay, good. I got it all. But you can see we are constantly scheduling events. We rely on our members and the folks who are our donors. So please, if you're not already a member of our organization, sign up, because we have some great programming, and the only way that we can fund this kind of programming is through the generous support of all of you. So thanks again, Christine Pavlik and Eric Sather, for joining us today. Really, really interesting discussion. And by all means, everybody else who's still there paying attention and watching, if you have a school board race that you're really interested in, especially if it falls outside of Maricopa County, we are interested. This, I think, may have been one of the most enlightening discussions that we've had about school boards, just because we hear, there was a saying when I lived in Illinois, outside of Chicago, there's this little place called Illinois, and it's kind of the same for Maricopa County. Outside of Maricopa County, there's this little place called Arizona. So we want to hear from everybody in the state of Arizona so that we can address and discuss and enlighten everybody about the issues facing you. So thank you again to Christine and to Eric. Thanks to Lindsay for always setting up such a great program. And I hope that everybody has a really great night and has a great weekend coming up. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you much.
Bye.
Appreciate it.